Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to this Practice 3 watch-along for the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you are joining me from my qualifying preview that was, finished about an hour ago, then great to see you back. And if you are joining me for the first time this weekend, then great to have you along. And hopefully with me today, you'll be watching along the session. If you can't though, then just listen along and watch my stream, and I'll make sure to keep you absolutely bang up to date with everything that goes on. Hopefully you guys are doing well, no matter what time it is in your part of the world. Hopefully you're having a good day. And yeah, just about 14 minutes to go until practice 3 gets underway, and I can announce it will be a wet one as it is raining in Montreal. I don't know how bad it is, so I can't tell you whether it's going to be a wet, say a delayed start to practice, or maybe qualifying later could be delayed, or see some red flags because of excessive water. I don't know if we're at that point yet, because I haven't actually seen any footage from the track in terms of the weather. The Sky F1 show, or the F1 broadcast, is about to start, so I'm sure I'll see in a moment with that how bad the rain is. But in the wet, I think we're going to get, certainly at the front, I mean, it's going to be exciting. Obviously, with Charles Leclerc not able later to go for pole position, it's going to definitely make things a bit bittersweet. But when it comes to the midfield, I think we're definitely going to get in a very, very exciting field, or not field, but battle between, Vettel, Alonso, Gasly, Hamilton, Russell, Norris, Ricciardo, Ocon. I think we're going to get a very good battle between all of those drivers in the wet conditions, and going to ebb and flow as practice goes on. And I'm looking at the track. There is definitely some standing water about. Not sure if the session has been delayed or not. I'm not sure if there's been an announcement when it comes to that. I'll just have a look on Twitter quickly to see if is any news. Let me have a quick look. Don't think so at the moment, but not all of the track seems to be, under, say, or in poor condition. So I guess we'll see in a moment, as there's still thousands of fans, by the looks of it, still trying to get into the circuit on a very wet and cold day in Montreal. But before I get on to discussing the teams quickly, before we get into practice 3, let's get into the results of practice 1 and practice 2, shall we? So Max Verstappen topped practice 1. Carlos Sainz ended up in second place, and then it was Alonso third, and then fourth Sergio Perez, fifth Charles Leclerc, and then it was Russell, Stroll, Hamilton, Vettel, Ricciardo completing the top 10. And then the rest of the order was Gasly, Norris, Albon, Tsunoda, and then Ocon, Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, Schumacher, Latifi, and Magnussen. So that was your first practice session. And then in practice 2, Max Verstappen topped the session yet again. And that's why in my qualifying preview a moment ago, I said that I think he is the clear favourite for pole position and outright victory this weekend. And then it was Charles Leclerc second, Carlos Sainz third, Sebastian Vettel fourth, Fernando Alonso fifth, and then Gasly, Russell, Norris, Ricciardo, Ocon completing the top 10. And the rest of the order being Perez, Stroll, Hamilton, and then Magnussen, Schumacher, Zhou Guanyu, Tsunoda, Albon, Latifi, and Valtteri Bottas. So that was second practice, and certainly at the front, it's not looking as exciting as it has done in other weekends when it comes to single lap pace. But in the midfield, like I said, even in the dry, it is looking very exciting and very close between some very high quality drivers, some world champions in there. And yeah, I think there's going to be a great qualifying session later. And I think practice 3, if it does start and there's no delay here, then I think it should be a pretty good session, pretty exciting session. And we should get to see as well some, how good some of the drivers are in these conditions around Montreal. But I'll move on from that, and I'll go to these pictures. These pictures, by the way, on your screen will be the ones guiding you through practice 3 and qualifying later as well. So yeah, that's what I'm going to have on screen. And we've got, what, 9.5 minutes to go until practice 3 begins. I'll have a quick look again on Twitter to see if there has been any news in regards to a start or a delayed start to the session, and I still can't see anything as of yet, so we'll see later on. But yeah, before we get into the session, I'll quickly just get into the teams and, you know, how they're all looking. So Red Bull, I mean, in dry conditions, Red Bull looked to be the quickest car. In the wet, though, Ferrari should be quicker. The problem is, later, let's say it does rain for qualifying, which it looks as though it's going to, or at least be wet for qualifying. Because Charles Leclerc has a 10-place grid penalty, in terms of getting pole position, doesn't really matter because he's still going to be dropping back on the grid, and there are still rumours that he's going to take a new turbo and be starting from the very back of the grid for tomorrow's race. So, yeah, it's really down to, in terms of looking at this session going into qualifying later for the wet conditions, we really have to look at Carlos Sainz to see what he can do against Max Verstappen in the wet. Now, like I said, I think the Ferrari will be a better wet weather car, but because of how great Max is in the wet, I think he will still be able, Max, to be pretty quick in the wet conditions and still very competitive with the two Ferrari drivers. So, even though, yeah, Ferrari should be better in wet conditions, Red Bull will still be very quick, Ferrari should be better, as I just said. And then after that, like I said, it's going to be a very exciting fight between Alpine, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, and possibly AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly as well. Look out, though, for Mercedes and McLaren, because I think those two teams, and probably Aston Martin as well, I think those three teams could be very, very good in these conditions. And if you actually look at the FP2 data and the best sector times, McLaren, in the sectors with more corners, were pretty good. It's just the straight line speed they were suffering with, and also, or not also, obviously, in the wet, you know, if you are losing a lot of time down the straights, if it does rain, you don't tend to lose as much as you would do in dry conditions. So look out for McLaren especially. I would not be surprised if they were very strong in practice 3 and qualifying later. And Mercedes, you know, should help them as well. Should also help with the porpoising, because they won't be running as high a speed, obviously, in the wet that you would do in the dry. And obviously, you know, you've got Alonso, Vettel up there as well, who I'm sure will put in some good performances in the wet. So really, the main thing I'm looking out for is the upper midfield in this practice session to see how they do. And also looking out for, you know, any surprises from, say, Haas and Alfa Romeo. And also looking out for, you know, obviously because Leclerc has his 10-place penalty, I want to see whether Carlos Sainz in the wet, you know, does he have the pace to compete with Verstappen in wet conditions? My guess is that he'll be close, but Verstappen will still have the edge over Carlos Sainz. So we'll see what happens in practice. Hopefully we get a very close session between all of the drivers, as we're just looking at Mercedes, who appear to be just getting their cars ready. And, well, only a few minutes to go until the start of the session, so they don't seem to be that ready, to be honest, for the start of the session. Yeah, haven't seen, like I said, any news in regards to a possible session delay, but I will just quickly have a look. Yeah, no news, no confirmed news as of yet when it comes to possible delay to the start. So it looks as though we are going to start on time, and hopefully that is the case. But we've got, what, 4.5 minutes to go now. And I'll just quickly plug that I will be live, guys, one more time today, obviously, for the main event of today, being the qualifying watch-along will be live on the channel at 8:30 p.m. UK time. That's in, 2.5 hours pretty much from now. So make sure to join me for that later on for, like I said, the main event of the day. And then tomorrow, I'll be live for the race preview at 4 p.m. UK time. And then live again at 6:30 p.m. UK time for the race watch-along/reaction. And then live on Monday for an in-depth review into what happens in the Grand Prix on Sunday. So yeah, plenty of content coming your way. So don't forget, if you are new to the channel, to subscribe for that. And don't forget as well, if you're watching, to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And make sure to give me a follow on Twitter at ChazHD5. As the F1 intro is now playing. So we are not far away now. But yeah, I don't expect cars to be flying out onto track, to be honest, because what do you call it? Because yeah, conditions aren't great. But then again, the because of the way the conditions are, you do want your drivers to get well acclimatized to the conditions. So wouldn't be the worst thing to send your car straight out there to get, used to how the car is feeling in the wet. And as well, we have to remember, we've not had a wet, I don't think we've had a wet session in Canada for years. Maybe 5-6 years at least. But obviously for qualifying later, if it is wet, which it looks as though it's likely to be, we haven't had a wet qualifying here in 9 years. And in 2013, I think it was only wet for like 2 of the 3 parts of qualifying. But yeah, we don't normally get rain here at the Canadian Grand Prix. We used to quite a bit. If you go look back at the Canadian Grand Prix of the 80s and a couple races in the 90s, rain was quite common. But yeah, really in the last 10 to 15 years, it's not been a very common thing. So getting the drivers used to the conditions for qualifying will be very, very important. If it is dry, then the 3 compounds are the C5, C4, C3, the 3 softest in the range, and obviously in the wet they'll be using either intermediates or wets. By the looks of it, they'll be using wets because there is a bit of standing water out there. It is only 11 degrees Celsius. That's pretty much like at best a winter's day here in the UK. That's how cold it is. And only 16 degrees Celsius for the track temperature. And there is a slight wind of 7 kilometers an hour, but it's nothing dramatic. Not as bad as we saw in Baku, but yeah, the weather not great with the rain. As almost everyone in the grandstand has a hoodie on or some sort of coat on to protect themselves from the rain. And yeah, it looks bitterly cold. It's almost as if we're in October or November. And they're just showing the radar and a massive, rainstorm all encompassing the track right now. So, yeah, the rain ain't going anywhere probably for the rest of the day by the looks of it. But it is reported to be a sunny, dry race. So what will happen for tomorrow is, even though it'll be dry, because the track will be in a very much newer, greener condition, the tyres will wear out a lot quicker tomorrow. And obviously with the 3 softest compounds this weekend, that's probably going to make tomorrow probably a 2-stop race at least. As just looking down the pit lane, and no one coming out yet, but the session hasn't actually started. Let me just get my graphics ready. So obviously the pictures I've got on screen are from the dry running yesterday. And yeah, FP3 will be obviously an hour-long session. I'll sync the timer up at 59 minutes. Because obviously I, normally have trouble syncing it up on the exact beginning of the session. So I may as well sync it up a minute in. So that's what I'm going to do. As the 2 Ferraris look as though they're about to come out. So looks as though the track, they've deemed it in good enough condition to get out there on track. John Hawking says, I hope they don't postpone this. I don't think they will. I mean, it's raining, but it's not biblical rain like we saw after practice 2 or what do you call it, that we saw on Thursday. I mean, there is standing water about. It's going to be tricky conditions, very tricky conditions for the drivers, but I think on the wet compound they can get through this track. But yeah, absolutely no chance of an intermediate tyre being run in practice 3. Especially if the rain keeps falling for the rest of the day. Probably going to be a wet weather tyre for the whole day. And obviously, they don't get that many sets of the wet tyre. I think, is it 3 sets only for the weekend or for qualifying? I think it is. As the session, by the way, has begun. And the first car on track is a Haas. Don't know who it is. But he is exiting the pit lane now and exiting turn 2 and begins his session. So, yeah, session underway. And let's hope to see some good action here in practice 3. As the Haas is crawling around on this outlap. It's Kevin Magnussen, and I think he's been followed by the 2 Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. In full wet conditions, the lap times should be probably mid 1 minute, in between a 120 and 130, so like a 125, 126 probably. I forgot, by the way, to sync up the timer, so I'm sorry about that. I'll do it in about 40 seconds time or 50 seconds time. Yeah, the lap time's probably going to be about not lap 25, a 125 or 126, I'd imagine, in these conditions. Maybe even worse if the track condition is really that poor. Doesn't seem to be, though, where the in the middle of the track where there's a lot of tree cover, doesn't seem to be anywhere near as bad as when they're in the more open parts of the track. So not all of the track is in full wet condition, but yeah, it's definitely going to be a full wet tyre. And there you go. So 58 minutes to go here in practice 3. George Russell, not even, by the looks of it, dressed quite yet to get in the car. Neither is Esteban Ocon. So again, I am surprised that they're not going to go out and get some running in. As Ocon there on the pit wall, just saying hello to his team. And we're now looking at Kevin Magnussen, who's on a lap on the wet tyre, and his rear end is all over the place on the exit of turn 4. Thankfully, he didn't crash. And now it's coming through turn 6 and 7, and the car, I mean, he's not pushing as hard as possible, but the car on the rear end looks pretty hard to drive. It does for K-Mag, as now Charles Leclerc comes out on track. I think the car I thought came out, I think, were the 2 Alfa Romeos possibly. As Mick Schumacher there, just starting a lap. There's quite a big puddle in between turn 2 and turn 3, which the drivers will have to make sure they get their, the traction out of turn 2 sorted out. Because if they don't, as Mick says, the conditions are quite shit out here, to be honest. If they don't get traction sorted on the exit of turn 2, then if they hit that puddle, there's a big chance of a crash. As I think Kevin Magnussen is about to set the first time of the session. And yeah, he just has. So Magnussen is in first position. But yeah, very slow at the minute. As Lewis Hamilton looks as though he's going to be going out very soon in his Mercedes. Hopefully his Mercedes set up in a better way today than it was yesterday, where they were still trying some experiments. Here's a replay of Mick Schumacher at turn 6. locks the inside front, runs horribly wide, and then almost spins on the entry curb to turn 7. And then gets going again. As we're looking at Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. I note this is Carlos Sainz, who's just exiting the hairpin. And yeah, Kevin Magnussen's best time so far, a 1:43.0, as Mick Schumacher does a 1:45.5. So it's a 1-2 for Haas at the minute. As we're looking at Carlos Sainz exiting the final chicane, losing the rear end quite a bit on the exit of the final chicane, and now begins his lap. And into turn 1 he comes. And yeah, taking it easy as he has to. But, the more and more these drivers, as Carlos losing the rear end a bit on the exit turn 2, the more and more these drivers put laps in, it will improve the track condition because the rain isn't falling that hard to make it even worse. I mean, the reason there's lots of standing water is because nobody's been out there in a while, I don't think. So, yeah, the more laps that are done, the more it'll help the track condition. So by the end of the session, it should be in a much better condition. As Carlos Sainz has exited turn 7. And he's now heading towards turn 8. Obviously, in these conditions, DRS will not be open. And now into turn 8 and 9. And yeah, he's barely pushing in these conditions right now. And, well, he's currently faster than Magnussen, but that's not really a surprise. He's done a purple middle sector, 1.2 seconds quicker. As Carlos Sainz now is onto the back straight, going into the final chicane. And if he completes this lap, this should be him going fastest as he comes into the final chicane now. No, doesn't. Comes into the pit lane. So Carlos Sainz aborts that lap as we've got Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel on a lap currently. And also Yuki Tsunoda and Lewis Hamilton are on out laps as it stands. John Hawkins says probably better to go out later when there is a dry line. I understand what you mean, but I think it probably helps if you help dry the line also. And yeah, I just think that's, better. So that's a replay of, is it Sainz on his outlap, I think, a few minutes ago, just going deep at turn 9. And also losing the rear end quite a bit on the exit of the turn 10 hairpin. As here's a replay of Magnussen going deep and going across the escape road that Sebastian Vettel did infamously in 2019. Also in that wall just before, where Vettel, came back onto track. We've had a couple accidents there in the past in wet conditions. As Red Bull are just, I think, belting Sergio Perez into his car. Just looking at Twitter, apparently, according to some data, Red Bull is 7 kilometers an hour faster on the straights in practice 2 they were yesterday compared to Ferrari, despite running similar wings. So, yeah. In the dry, yeah, Red Bull have got an advantage there. In the wet, it will be some sort of an advantage, but it won't be as, as big of one as it is in the wet, as we can't even see Sebastian Vettel coming down the straight. Is it Sebastian Vettel? No, it's Lance Stroll. They've both got very similar helmets for this weekend, which is a bit annoying. But Kevin Magnussen has improved to 139.1, and now it is Yuki Tsunoda who is second for AlphaTauri, and then it's Sebastian Vettel in 4th place. And then Lance Stroll is in... Lance Stroll is in 5th. But Stroll's first time was a 2-minute 41, which is about 1 minute and 20 seconds off the pace. For what, they should be doing in qualifying later. Right, so I've just had confirmation, guys, about Charles Leclerc. Confirmation of a further grid penalty for Leclerc as he takes a new power unit. So Charles Leclerc will start tomorrow's Grand Prix at the very back of the grid. So as long as Max Verstappen, if he as long as he is ahead of everyone else except for Leclerc, then Max Verstappen will get pole position today. And then if he does get pole, all he has to do is keep it ahead of Sainz on the first lap, or whoever's next to him, and then just look after his car and come home and win the race. Because, people may think, Leclerc, he'll still make his way through from the back of the field. Yeah, he will come through to finish in the points, but I don't think he'll do as well as people think he will. Because remember, Montreal is still a pretty tough racetrack to overtake on. And also, the Ferrari in a straight line isn't necessarily, massively quick, or at least quick enough to easily dispatch a lot of the field. And, if Leclerc comes up against a train of cars that all have DRS on each other, then that's going to hamper his race massively. So, yeah, unless Verstappen has a major issue that causes him to finish below Leclerc or retire from the race, then I think that it's going to take a miracle for Charles Leclerc at this point to win this year's World Championship. And confirmation that Leclerc has taken a new ICE, Turbo, MGUH and MGUK. Carlos Sainz as well has taken a new ICE, but has not got a penalty for that, because he hasn't exceeded the amount of parts he's allowed to use for that. So, yeah, there you go. So, Kevin Magnussen is quickest in this session. Sebastian Vettel is second, and then it's Tsunoda, Schumacher, and Stroll. As we're looking at Vettel now completing Sector 1. And Vettel couple tenths off on Magnussen in the first sector. As Tsunoda goes back up to second. The quickest time so far, 1:39. But like I said, I don't think they're anywhere near what they could be doing on the full wet tyre. As Sebastian Vettel now exits turn 9. And yeah, grip definitely improving out there. And he's now slightly slower than Magnussen through the middle sector. As Lando Norris, I can announce, is on a lap currently, on a timed lap. He's currently Norris, and he's just exiting turn 2 and coming into turn 3. So we'll see what he can do. As Sebastian Vettel comes down the back straight into the final chicane, and pretty decent run for Vettel, and gets a good exit as well. Remember, the last qualifying session that was wet in Canada, Sebastian Vettel got pole that day. Obviously, it was in a much faster car and better team, but yeah, Sebastian not to be counted out in wet conditions here in Montreal, and not to be counted out really at all, based on this season so far, and also based on, based on how he's done here in Montreal in the past, as Lando Norris is on not a warm-up lap, but, a lap that, it's just getting him, acclimatized to the track, so this won't be a very quick one. Nice, we've got a few cars on track now. I've got the 2 Alfa Romeos on an outlap, and we've got Daniel Ricciardo as well on an outlap. So we've got a few cars on track at the moment, as Lando Norris comes into the final chicane. For some reason, bounces over the curbs very hard, which yeah, that's not what you should be doing in the wet, because it's going to cause you to be closer to having a spin as Lando Norris goes up to P5 in the Alfa Romeo. As the two Haases that have done time so far are first and sixth, and they're both in the pits. As we're looking at Daniel Ricciardo, who I think is about to start a timed run. I think Ricciardo in the wet here in that session in 2013 did pretty decently. As Sebastian Vettel goes quickest on a 1:39 flat, 1:39.0. Yeah, Ricciardo that day in 2013, obviously driving for Toro Rosso. I think he qualified 9th. Obviously that year had plenty of Q3 appearances. That's what got him into the Red Bull team for 2014. But yeah, it was a great session for him that day. So at least he does have experience of what it's like in the wet here in Canada. And his teammate does not, as Ricciardo comes to the end of the first sector. And like Norris, this is not going to be a very quick first run, but I'm sure he'll get quicker as his laps go on. As Lance Stroll improves his time to a 1:39.6. As Ricciardo is just coming into turn 8 and 9. And yeah, not very quick. As Sergio Perez is on an outlap now. So I'm assuming Max Verstappen won't be too far away from coming out on track as well. Be interesting to see what Verstappen does, because normally we see that Max will come out and with his first time lap put in an amazing first lap in terms of his lap time and get pretty close to the limit. So yeah, be very, very, very interesting to see what Max does. As Ricciardo coming into the final chicane, and Sebastian Vettel goes about 0.8 of a second quicker than his personal best and stays fastest by 8.5 tenths. Daniel Ricciardo goes 5th for McLaren. As now Zhou Guanyu goes 5th, and let's see what Valtteri Bottas does as he comes to the line. Bottas goes 5th. Also, reminder, in that wet qualifying session in 2013, Bottas, in a very slow Williams car that year, qualified 3rd on the grid, out-qualifying, Rosberg, Webber, Alonso just behind him. It was really the first indication as to how good Valtteri Bottas was. And it can be for other drivers out there today. It really could show us, it could show us, certain drivers in the field that, how good they are. As Max Verstappen, by the way, doesn't look as though he's coming out on track anytime soon, as Sergio Perez is about to start a flying lap, and he does now, and he's coming in now to turn 1. And I expect, like the McLarens, it's not going to be the fastest first run, as he's losing the rear end a couple times on the exit of turn 2 into turn 3. And Perez just cruising through. And now Perez comes to the end of sector 1. And yeah, this is not going to be a very quick run, as Yuki Tsunoda now goes quickest for AlphaTauri by 0.03 of a second. So Tsunoda into first. Reminder though, not just is Leclerc starting from the back, but so is Tsunoda. So Tsunoda, we can't really look at what he's going to do in terms of his single lap speed, because it doesn't matter what he does. He'll be starting at the back. As Sergio Perez losing the rear end on the exit of turn 9. And yeah, quite slow at the moment. As now he exits the turn 10 hairpin and enters the main straight, and this will be the main straight obviously for overtaking on Sunday, tomorrow. Yeah, currently Tsunoda, Vettel, Magnussen, Stroll, Bottas, Ricciardo, Zhou, Norris, Schumacher, only 9 times on the board as Sergio Perez comes back into the pits. And we're 20 minutes in now to practice 3. By the way, hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to G Walker. Great to see you. And yeah, hello to everyone watching. And if you have just joined me, just a reminder of the breaking news, the official news, that Charles Leclerc will start tomorrow's Grand Prix from the very back of the grid, as he's taken on now a completely new power unit. So, yeah, Leclerc has to hope for a miracle if he's going to get back into this championship fight. As Zhou Guanyu is just coming down the back straight, following the McLaren ahead, and now coming into the final chicane. And Sky F1 have gone to an ad break, so I can't tell you what happened with that lap. But yeah, Leclerc has taken a penalty, which there was already, there was already news about that, or not news, but heavy rumours about that. So it's not really the biggest surprise, but that's the consequence of, his two engine blowouts in Barcelona and Baku, both comfortably from the lead of the race. Let's see if I can find any other news on Twitter quickly. Don't think I can at the moment. No other news other than Leclerc's penalty. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens when they come back. Hello by the way, to Scott McDonald in the chat. Blessed Dube asks, how are the new bouncing and porpoising rules playing out? That FIA technical directive isn't for this weekend. They say it is, but essentially what they're doing is they're measuring this weekend the levels of bouncing and porpoising that all the teams are having, so then they can come up with a metric for next weekend, or not next weekend, the next Grand Prix at Silverstone, so they can come up with a limit for what is acceptable porpoising or bouncing. So it's not going to properly come into effect until the British Grand Prix. To be honest, though, Silverstone is a pretty smooth racetrack now because it was resurfaced a few years ago, so I don't expect it to be that big of a problem. It might be at the Red Bull Ring into a couple of the braking zones. It might be a bit of a problem, but at Silverstone, like I said, I don't think it'll be a massive issue for the teams. But thankfully for the teams, it is raining, so those porpoising problems won't be as bad, because obviously the higher speed you're at, it's more likely to happen, because it normally happens on acceleration sections of tracks or straights or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, not going to be happening properly today to the point where it's going to make a massive difference. As, by the way, if you hear any noise in the background, it's also absolutely pissing down where I am in the UK. Where I live in the UK is the closest point in England to North America. So I guess you could maybe guess, what county I live in. I'm not going to tell you exactly where I live, obviously, but yeah, where I live is the closest point to North America. So this weather is not just in Canada, it's in this part of the UK as well. As Sky look as though they're about to come back from the ad break. So let's see what happens. And also a quick warning that if the stream does cut off for any reason, it's probably because of the rain. So yeah, just giving a warning about that now in case it does cut off for any reason, because it's raining heavily outside my room. Anyway, Valtteri Bottas, they've come back from the ad break, and Valtteri Bottas is quickest. And then it is Lance Stroll in second. We're currently on the TV broadcast looking at Carlos Sainz on a time lap. Looks as though he's about to go quickest. But it's Bottas, Stroll, and then Tsunoda third, Vettel fourth, Zhou fifth, then Magnussen, Ricciardo, Norris, Schumacher, Carlos Sainz comes to the line and he's going to go quickest. And he does by 1.1 seconds pretty much to a 136.8. So, yeah, Carlos Sainz is quickest and his teammate, Charles Leclerc, is on an outlap. But Carlos, he is the main hope for Ferrari today. Because if he can get pole position in the race, then, gives them hope. If, Leclerc can come through the field quick enough, it does give them hope that, he can back Verstappen into more of the midfield, and then maybe if there's a safety car or virtual safety car, later. Sorry about my chair, by the way, being so noisy. If there's a virtual safety car or safety car later in the race, then could give Charles Leclerc an opportunity to actually fight Verstappen. So yeah, we'll see if Sainz can do the job. But most likely, given what we've seen this season, I think you'll probably see Max Verstappen being the main man this weekend. As Carlos Sainz has done another lap. He's not completed it, but he's about to. And he's done a purple Sector 1 and Sector 2. So he's about to go even quicker. As, Charles Leclerc's on an outlap. And so are the two Alpines of Ocon and Alonso. And also the AlphaTauri of Gasly and the Williams of Alex Albon. The only cars that have not come out, I think, are Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Nicholas Latifi, and Max Verstappen, as, Sainz goes another second quicker. And he's now quickest on a 1:35.8 is the Spaniard. But we'll see what his teammate can do. Obviously, it doesn't really matter what he can do, because he's going to be starting from the back. I am curious to see, with Leclerc, to see whether he does qualifying later. To be honest, I don't think they should bother because, reliability is a concern right now. And for them, I would not be risking, another problem with the power unit in qualifying. So, yeah. Blessed You says it seems there are too many experiments on Hamilton's side of the garage this season. I understand why they're experimenting to try and see if they can luck onto some kind of amazing setup. But I think at this point they need to give up with that, because at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to find a setup with this car that works. It's just fundamentally a bad car. So what they need to do is just set the car up how they know it works, and let Lewis do his thing, do as well as he can. And then go from there. And then, if you can upgrade the car at Silverstone and make it better, then, please do. But, yeah, trying different setups to try and see if they can magically become quick again, I don't think it's going to work for them. It's like throwing shit against a wall and hoping something sticks. So, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. As Fernando Alonso is on his first time lap, not the quickest in the world. As the track definitely improving now in track condition. It seems as well the sky is a bit brighter overhead than it was in certain parts of the track. Not as dark and grim looking at certain parts of the circuit. So conditions are improving. The track is improving with its condition. So, yeah, definitely not bad enough to postpone qualifying later. And, what do you call it? I mean, if it doesn't really rain hard again for the rest of the day, then I think qualifying later should be fine. Mercedes, Toto have made decision to focus on next year's car. No hope for this year. Yeah. I mean, if their Silverstone upgrade doesn't really put them, in the position to fight with Ferrari and Red Bull, then they may as well just, give up on the car and just focus on, their redesign for next year's car. Like I said, I think what they're going to have to do is probably throw away the concept that they've gone for this year and go with a completely new one for next year, because I just don't think this concept design concept works. I think that's pretty clear to see. As Fernando Alonso with his first time goes 6th. Alex Albon goes 12th. As Esteban... Oh, wait, hold on. Pierre Gasly. Let me just put him up there. He goes 9th. And then it's Ocon in 11th. And then Alex Albon in 12th. Here's a replay of Ocon locking his outside front into turn 1. And then going deep. And cutting off turn 2 and exiting on the exit of turn 2. And then a replay of Albon locking up, I think, both front tyres going into turn 8. And then using the escape road to get back on track on the exit of turn 9. As here is Nicholas Latifi coming into the final chicane. And not expecting anything great here from Latifi. As long as he doesn't crash, that'll be fine. Latifi comes to the line and goes 15th, slowest of all. But yeah, currently it's Sainz, Bottas, Stroll. Well, not anymore. Because Fernando Alonso has gone 2nd for Alpine. Only 0.2 slower than Sainz, interestingly. As Ocon has gone deep at turn 8 and has gone down the escape road and rejoined at turn 9. As Pierre Gasly now goes up to 4th. But yeah, current top 10, Sainz, Alonso, Bottas, Gasly, Stroll, Tsunoda, Vettel, Zhou, Magnussen. And then in 10th is now Alex Albon. And then Ricciardo, Ocon, Norris, Schumacher, Latifi, the rest that have set times. Leclerc, Hamilton, Perez, Verstappen, Russell have not set a lap time. Maybe Charles Leclerc won't even bother setting a time, considering he won't be able to do representative race fuel running or long runs, because I mean the race tomorrow is forecast to be dry, and it's not going to be dry today. So yeah, maybe he won't even do a lap today. That'd be pretty disappointing for him, but it is possible. As we're looking at Alex Albon on a new timed lap. As Albon fighting the car desperately through turn 8 and 9. And now comes up to the middle sector point. And this is an improved lap. He's 1.8 seconds down on the lap so far. So he'll probably, as he goes a bit, almost spinning on the exit of turn 10. It went a bit too wide, I think, through turn 10. But he should improve on this lap still. As we are, 27.5 minutes to go. Just over. As Pierre Gasly goes 3rd for AlphaTauri. And Alex Albon exits the final chicane. And comes to the line and does improve up to 9th. As someone go into the top 10 just then? Just trying to see. No. He did go down to 11th for some reason. Don't know why. But, yeah, he is up to 9th. I think it was because of Ocon. As Ocon is now 11th ahead of the two McLarens. As Lewis Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton, I can announce, is now on track on an outlap. So let's see what Lewis can do. He's only raced here twice in the wet. Obviously the race in 2011 where he had an absolute disaster, crashing with his teammate and ended up retiring pretty quickly into the race. And then in 2013 did pretty well in the Mercedes that wasn't that quick that season and that weekend, to put it on the front row with Sebastian Vettel as Pierre Gasly does a Vettel at turn 3 and 4. And yeah, we're looking at Lewis Hamilton on his... this is George Russell, who's on a timed lap. So let's see what Russell can do with these few laps it'll do. Obviously, his first lap will be probably quite slow. Rooksfoot says Leclerc should save his engine for the race, maybe even for Silverstone if he gets stuck in DRS train and not going anywhere. No, he's retracted it. Don't know why you've retracted it. Seemed a fine comment to me, Rook. As Russell, I think, is about to complete the middle sector. He is. He's not going that quickly, so this is not going to be the quickest run from Russell. As Russell now onto the back straight, or the main, straight around the track. And Russell now into the final chicane. And these conditions, like I said, once they start setting some quicker times, these conditions should suit Mercedes better than the dry, a lot better than the dry. As Russell goes from 19th up to only P12, but that's only his first run of the day. As here is Max Verstappen on an outlap, and he's about to start his first timed lap, it appears. As Lewis Hamilton is also on his first timed lap right now. Let's see what Verstappen can do. Can Max go straight to the top? I'll be very impressed if he did. With his first lap of the day. Let's see as he comes into turn 1 and turn 2. Oh, yeah, bit of standing water on the inside of that curb, and that's what forced him to oversteer wide. As Pierre Gasly has improved his lap, but he stays in third place on a 1:36.8, about second off Carlos Sainz's best time of a 1:35.8. As, Verstappen, not the quickest first sector in the world. And, struggling so far on this lap. And now heads down to turn 8. But whilst he's on this lap, just want to say again, guys, don't forget I'll be live at 8:30 p.m. UK time this evening. That's in 2 hours from now, for the qualifying watch along for the Canadian Grand Prix. So don't forget to come along to that later. And also don't forget I'll be live twice tomorrow for the race preview at 4 p.m. UK time and the race watch along at 6:30 p.m. UK time. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And don't forget as well, if you're watching, to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. As Esteban Ocon, Max Verstappen, by the way, comes back into the pits. So not going to go for a run yet. Esteban Ocon goes 4th for Alpine. Russell has gone 9th for Mercedes, as here's a replay of Verstappen into turn 1. And I think this is just a replay of him at turn 2, losing the rear end. Yep. But hopefully the Red Bulls will come out and actually do a few laps, because for qualifying, that will be important for them to get some sort of knowledge, because they don't want to be learning still in qualifying. They want to be able to go out there and bang in some good laps, rather than learn the track in these conditions. Obviously, the only driver at Red Bull that has raced here in the wet is Sergio Perez in qualifying in 2013. Verstappen, not sure he ever has driven in the wet here. But top 10 with 22, just over 20 minutes to go. Is Sainz, Alonso, Gasly, Ocon, Bottas, and then Stroll, Tsunoda, Vettel, Russell, and Albon. And then the rest of the order, as Russell actually goes 3rd for Mercedes. The rest of the order, as Lewis Hamilton has gone 10th. Hold on, let me just update that. Lewis Hamilton up to 10th, teammate up to 3rd. Mercedes looking decent so far. No one, though, I think is running close to their quickest. Top 10 currently: Sainz, Alonso, Russell, and then Gasly, Ocon, Bottas, Stroll, Tsunoda, Vettel, Hamilton. And then the rest of the order: Schumacher, Albon, Zhou, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Norris, Latifi. Only Leclerc and the 2 Red Bulls have not set a time, as Sebastian Vettel is currently on track to go probably 3rd with this lap he's on. About 10th.5 down on Sainz after the first 2 sectors. Let's see what he does as he now comes onto the main straight, coming now down to the final chicane as Lewis Hamilton is on a much better lap as well, only about 0.4 of a second off Sainz after the first two sectors. And Vettel now exits the final chicane, looks good in his Aston Martin in these conditions, and comes to the line, and Vettel goes quickest by almost 0.04 of a second, so brilliant there from Vettel. As Tsunoda goes 6th for AlphaTauri, as Lewis Hamilton will now come to the line and go only 6th. Lost a lot of time in that final sector. 0.6 or 0.7 of a second, I think it might have been. As here's Lance Stroll exiting the hairpin. Very good exit for Stroll. Is he on a lap? Yes, he is. And he's done 2 personal best sectors as Mick Schumacher puts himself into the top 10. And Lance Stroll into the final chicane. Let's see where he'll go with this lap. Gotta say, the Aston Martin looks pretty good in the wet here. Doesn't look really to be stepping out massively on the drivers. As Stroll goes 5th for Aston Martin. So, decent run there for the Canadian. As Sebastian Vettel is on another personal best lap. He's done a purple middle sector as well on this lap. So, this is looking very good for Sebastian as he heads down now into the final chicane, as Alex Albon goes 10th for Williams, and Sebastian Vettel now exits final chicane, now coming to the line, and Vettel does not go any quicker. I think may have lost time on the exit of turn 10 where he got a bit of oversteer, had to correct the car slightly, as Tsunoda pushes his way up to 4th place. So, yeah, Vettel looking pretty good in these conditions. As here is Charles Leclerc on an outlap with just under 20 minutes to go. So, maybe we'll get to see Leclerc doing a flying lap, or will he come straight back into the pits? He'll come straight back into the pits. So, yeah, doesn't look as though Leclerc later in qualifying is going to do any running, which is sad, but there's no point taking any risk with his new power unit. As well, looks as though he's going to do a practice start, possibly on the exit of the pit lane. As Lance Stroll is 5th now for Aston Martin with a new lap. Fernando Alonso has now begun a new lap, and Alonso is on the intermediate tyre. So let's see if he can improve on this lap. I'm not sure the track is quite good enough for inters, but if he can go quicker, then, well, that'd be impressive. I mean, definitely in the end of Sector 1 and probably the first half of Sector 2, it looks to be intermediate tyre conditions, but yeah. First sector, yeah, slower than his personal best by a bit. Not a massive amount, though. Let's see what he does for the middle sector as he exits turn 7, where he famously crashed in 2008 when he was heading for a podium that day for Renault. As Alonso into turn 8 and 9. And yeah, this doesn't look to be the greatest lap in the world. And yeah, doesn't seem to be quite... the conditions don't seem to be good enough yet for intermediate tyres. But if he can keep pounding round on those tyres, then, you know, with the conditions improving, then he should get quicker on those intermediate tyres. Because he's not... I mean, he's going to be about, say, 4 seconds off the best time of the day so far, but that's not, you know, that's not a massive amount, and I'm sure he will be able to improve as Fernando does come to the line and does a 1 minute 38.6, I think that is, no, 38.4, so yeah, only 2.5 seconds off on the Inter. So yeah, if you can just keep pounding round, you know, keep the tyres warm find a dry enough line, then those tyres will come good. As we enter the final 15 minutes here in practice 3. Bastian Costa asks, is Leclerc a good bet for qualifying? Well, to be honest, I don't know if he's going to do qualifying, because if you don't know, he's starting from the back tomorrow because he's taken on a completely new power unit. So I don't even know if he's going to do qualifying. I'd be surprised if he did, to be honest. I don't see the point in doing qualifying. As Kevin Magnussen goes 7th. Or, I don't know why I put Mick Schumacher 7th, but it's actually Magnussen who's 7th. Oh. There you go. And it should be Mick Schumacher down to 11th. So your top 10 with 15 minutes left is Vettel, Sainz, Alonso, Tsunoda, and then Stroll, Russell, Magnussen. Gasly is now 8th, and then it's Hamilton 9th, Ocon 10th. As Fernando Alonso has done a purple middle sector, so there you go. Intermediate tyres are the tyres to be on now. These intermediate tyres then have got to be pretty nice, as Sainz really losing the rear end quite a lot on the exit of turn 2, as Alonso has now gone quickest on the intermediate by a second over Sebastian Vettel. So he's gained about 1.3, 1.5 seconds on his personal best. As Sainz has not done a personal best first sector, but it's, not a bad first sector. As Latifi goes up to 16th, as the two McLarens I can announce are on outlaps, and so is Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. I think Verstappen is just behind Carlos Sainz there, who I think just overtook him. And Sainz for the middle sector has done a personal best, but it's not a purple middle sector, as Kevin Magnussen goes 2nd for the Haas team, and Fernando Alonso is on another quick lap. He's done a purple first sector for the in the Alpine. He's now done a purple middle sector as well. Runs very wide on the exit of the hairpin, but that doesn't necessarily mean you go slower in these conditions, because you in these conditions tend to use the karting line or go offline for the grip. Because online, where the rubber will be, and it'll be more slippery. As Carlos Sainz goes 2nd on that intermediate, as Fernando Alonso will now come to the line and surely go quickest, or stay quickest, and he does. Goes 0.6 of a second quicker, and he's on a 1:34.2. As Stroll goes 2nd on the full wet tyre. And Sky F1 have now gone to an ad break, so I can't tell you what else is happening. John Hawkins asks, what tyre does Max have on? Let me have a look on the F1 website quickly. I'll just have a look. It should hopefully show me what tyre he is on. So Max is on the wet tyre, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's on the wet compound. So yeah, that's what Max is on right now. And right, so Alonso is quickest. And then it's Stroll 2nd, Sainz 3rd, and Vettel is now 4th. And then it's Magnussen, Tsunoda, Russell, Gasly, Hamilton, Ocon, and then Schumacher, Albon, Bottas, Latifi. Let me just put Latifi up. And then Zhou, Ricciardo. Norris has now gone 14th for McLaren. But yeah, Norris 14th, Latifi 15th, and then Zhou, Ricciardo, and then Leclerc, Perez, Verstappen have still not set a lap time. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Max Verstappen is on the wet. As Max Verstappen, I think at the moment, is on a new timed run on the wet compound. But I don't know how good it'll be. We'll have to see when he completes his lap. But yeah, once I come back from the ad break, obviously I'll be able to give you better information as to what is going on. I've got to say, though, with only 10 minutes to go in practice 3, because, I mean, they're doing good laps now, some of the teams, but because of the lack of running, it really makes things a bit weird and awkward going into qualifying, because now we don't really know from this session who is going to be competitive in the wet. I mean, we still have our, general ideas as to who we think will be good, but we haven't seen anything in this session to suggest a pecking order of such. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. As, yeah, still on that ad break. By the way, if you have any comments that you want to post in chat quickly whilst there is nothing going on and you want to ask me anything, then make sure to post it in the chat and I'll read your comment out quickly before we get to the end of the session. I'll just quickly check Twitter to see what's going on. Leclerc did 2 installation laps and now he's back in the garage. Ferrari are testing that everything is working properly with the new power unit, and well, hopefully it is. As yeah, now here they come back from the ad break, and I believe that Sebastian Vettel has gone quickest. This is a replay of Max Verstappen into turn 8 and loses the rear end into turn 9 and then almost spins, holds it nicely. But Verstappen, yeah, on the full wet tyre confirmation. But, yeah, no real laps. And he's come back into the pits as Max. As Sebastian Vettel, I think, now is quickest on a 1:33.8 on the intermediate tyre. So Vettel now the quickest man. And yeah, he is. So Sebastian Vettel is P1, and then it is Alonso second, Sainz third, Gasly fourth, and then Stroll fifth, and then Magnussen, Tsunoda, Russell eighth, and then as Fernando Alonso goes quickest now by 0.5 tenth of a second. Here comes Daniel Ricciardo, who goes fourth for McLaren. Good lap there on the intermediate tyre. So Ricciardo up to fourth, and then yeah, Gasly fifth, and then Stroll, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Russell. Bottas is now 10th, and then Hamilton 11th. Now Russell goes fourth, but Russell is still on the wet compound. As yeah, so Bottas 10th, Hamilton 11th. And then Ocon, Schumacher, Albon, Norris, Latifi, and Zhou. Sergio Perez, I think, is on a timed run at the minute. Hopefully will actually do a time, as Lando Norris has not done a personal best first sector. As Perez does do a first time of the day, but it's very slow. 1:40.0, I think it was, or a 40.3, something like that. As Norris now coming up to the middle sector point. I do think when we're in qualifying later, I do think McLaren will be pretty quick in these conditions. As there's a yellow flag in sector 1. Don't know what that's for. It's a Haas of Kevin Magnussen. Looks as though he has spun on the exit of turn 2. And he's now trying to reverse out. And hopefully that AlphaTauri that's coming through turn 2 now will not be blocked in any way. Thank God he's not. And Magnussen now reverses onto track. So, and the McLaren there just about gets through. And Russell goes third now for Mercedes on the wet tyre. That wasn't, though, done while speeding under yellow flags because it was only in turn 2, those yellow flags. As Magnussen gets going again. So, yeah. Wouldn't be surprised because we only got 5.5 minutes to go. Wouldn't be surprised if K-Mag came back into the pits because we're pretty much done for this session. As we're just seeing him tour around the track now, as Sergio Perez is just doing a quick couple slow laps by the looks of it. As here's a replay, so Magnussen into turn 1 and doesn't even stop for turn 1 and goes straight on to the grass at turn 2. I don't know, does his brakes work? He says, what happened there? Maybe some sort of brake problem because it looked as though he didn't even stop. Coming into turn 1. I mean, he did to a certain extent because if he didn't have any brakes at all, he would have just piled into the barriers on the exit of turn 2. As Sainz then goes down the escape road at turn 3. He'll have to reverse out of there. Here is Verstappen going very wide at the hairpin. So, yeah, drivers struggling with the conditions out there. As Carlos Sainz has come back into the pits now. Both Ferraris in the pits, and I don't think we'll see them again in this session. As Lewis Hamilton is on a timed run. His best time so far is on the wet compound. He's currently on an intermediate, but he's not done a personal best sector yet. As he comes into the final chicane, exits the final chicane now. Can he improve on his time of a 1:36.8? No, he cannot. Goes much slower, but does do a personal best final sector. Sergio Perez comes to the line, and, well, Perez is going pretty slow in the Red Bull. Probably just trying to get acclimatized to the conditions. As Esteban Ocon goes 8th for Alpine. As Perez continues on. But, who have we got? Pierre Gasly is now up to 4th. Zhou Guanyu goes 6th for Alfa Romeo. That's a good time for the Chinese driver. Obviously, very unlucky he was in Baku because he was heading for a points finish and then his car failed him as Valtteri Bottas goes 11th in the second Alfa Romeo. And here is a replay of Max Verstappen at turn 3. And will he go down the escape road as well? Nope, he does the Vettel and goes across the grass. And now he's gone deep and almost crashed at turn 2. So Verstappen really struggling in these conditions. As Russell improves yet again on the wet tyre. And Russell passes him and Alfa Verstappen gets going again. But yeah, Max not really handling these conditions well. Obviously, he's not pushing yet. I mean, he will be in qualifying later. But yeah, he's not really getting on well with these conditions for some reason. So he comes into turn 1. And then into turn 2. And then I think might have just touched a puddle. And that spun the car completely round and almost into the barriers. Let's see from the outer view. And into turn 2 he comes. And yeah, there must be some sort of puddle there that caused the car to spin around. And Verstappen gets going again. But yeah, it doesn't look as though Verstappen is going to do a timed run. Well, he has done a timed run for Verstappen, but it's, it's pretty slow. Verstappen is now 18th, Latifi 19th, and then you've got Schumacher in 17th. Lewis Hamilton is only 16th, but he is on another outlap, so he might do one final flying lap. Then it's Hamilton 16th, and then Perez 15th, and then Albon 14th, Tsunoda 13th, Norris 12th, then Bottas, Magnussen, and then your top 10 is, Alonso, Vettel, Russell, Gasly, Sainz, Zhou, Ricciardo, Stroll, Ocon, Magnussen, what a top 10 that would be in qualifying. As here comes Sergio Perez into the final chicane. And this looks to be possibly a lap that could take him to, maybe not the very top of the timesheets, but near enough. As he comes to the line, Sergio Perez goes from 15th up to 8th. So Perez, as Esteban Ocon goes 3rd for Alpine. So Alpine doing pretty well in these conditions. And yeah, so we've got 15 seconds to go. And we've got a few cars in the pits. Fernando Alonso comes into the pits now, and that is his session done. We'll see the final few times now, hopefully, as this is Daniel Ricciardo, currently 8th. Lando Norris also on a personal best, so is Max Verstappen. Here comes Ricciardo into the final chicane, as Valtteri Bottas goes 7th for Alfa Romeo. Ricciardo comes to the line and goes 3rd for McLaren. Great lap there. Daniel, here comes Lando Norris. Norris now goes 5th for McLaren. So Norris up to 5th. Here comes Max Verstappen, who only goes 7th. But obviously Red Bull will be much quicker than that in qualifying later. So Max Verstappen up to P7. And here is Esteban Ocon on another timed run. And Ocon, purple first sector, and he's probably going to go quickest with this lap as he comes to the line. Sergio Perez goes 7th, and Esteban Ocon just misses out but stays in 3rd, or actually goes up to 3rd place. Not a great final sector, but Alpine looking pretty quick here in the wet. So the practice session, by the way, guys, is now over as Hamilton improves up to 15th there. So Alonso, so this is the final. Oh, wait, it's not done yet. As Pierre Gasly goes 2nd for AlphaTauri. Let me just see what Zhou and Schumacher do. I don't think they're going to improve their laps. So no, they're not going to. So that's all done. So the final finishing order here in practice 3, final session going into qualifying. Alonso ends up quickest from Gasly 2nd, and then Vettel, Ocon, Ricciardo, and then Norris, Russell, Perez is in 8th, and then Verstappen is 9th, and then in 10th place is Carlos Sainz, and then the rest of the order, Valtteri Bottas 11th, Zhou 12th, Stroll 13th, Magnussen 14th, Lewis Hamilton 15th, Albon 16th, Tsunoda 17th, Schumacher 18th, Latifi 19th, and Charles Leclerc did not do a time. Obviously, he'll be starting from the back of the grid for the race, so there's no point in him doing any running today anyway. But that, guys, is practice 3 all done with. Make sure to join me in an hour and a half's time at 8:30 p.m. UK time for the qualifying watch-along for the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix. And also, obviously, for the race content tomorrow, 4 p.m. UK time for the race preview and 6:30 p.m. UK time for the race watch-along. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And as well, if you are watching, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 and join the Discord server, link below in the description. But guys, until my qualifying watch-along, a qualifying session that's going to be wet and very, very exciting. It's been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.